So good morning, everyone. My name is Jian. I am the Deputy Chairperson of Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technology Association, also known as ALITA. And I'm also an associate with Norton Rose Fulbright Ascendant. So I'm here today with four very distinguished panelists, and they all have very illustrious backgrounds. So I'll just quickly run through their profile and then give you a brief introduction as to what we will be covering today. First of all, we have Narae. Narae is a Korean attorney. She advises startups on legal and regulatory issues, as well as representing clients on corporate issues. She's worked in tech companies as legal counsel. She's also the organizer of the Seoul chapter of Legal Hackers, and she's currently doing her doctoral degree in corporate law at the Seoul National University, researching on cutting-edge legal issues, particularly on ethical and legal issues in the use of AI and blockchain. And then we have Brian. Brian is an innovator, educator, ecosystem builder who has worked at the confluence of law, technology, and finance in Hong Kong, New York, Silicon Valley, and Australia. He is currently the managing director of ACMI and is also the founding executive director of Light Lab at HKU, which is an interdisciplinary and experiential program that fosters law, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship at HKU's Faculty of Law. And then we have Kanan. Kanan is a justice innovation researcher at the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law. She's from India, and her work currently now focuses on developing insights on what makes justice innovation scale and sustain to prevent or resolve justice problems at scale. She's also an Acumen India Fellow, a legal hacker, as well as a global shaper with the World Economic Forum. Then finally, we have Adeline. I'm sure many of you know of her. She's one of the co-organizers of this LawTech track at the KL Startup Summit. She is the co-founder of 3 legal-related companies, LawTech Malaysia, LawAsia 365, and Cyrus Bookstore. She is a law graduate from University of London and an MBA holder from Sydney Business School. She's authored several white papers on publications relating to knowledge management and legal tech. And she's, amongst other things, she sits as a member of the Tech Expert Committee, established under the auspices of the Asian International Arbitration Center. And all of us here, Narae, Brian, Kanan, Adeline, myself, we are all part of the steering committee of ALITA. So that's our background. And today we're here to discuss really about how COVID-19 has affected the legal industry and how technology has been used to address the impact of the pandemic. And then we'll then move on to also talk about how if you are someone from the startup industry or you're an entrepreneur, how you might be able to tap into some of these opportunities that has arisen because of COVID in Asia, across Asia. And then we'll also briefly address how things, in our opinion, will change post-pandemic. So these are some of the key areas that we'll touch on, and then we'll open up for Q&A towards the end. So please feel free, and you're highly encouraged to ask any questions that you have. I think I speak for most people that it's very rare to have a panel with perspectives from 4 or 5 different jurisdictions. So you've got Narae from Korea, Brian from Hong Kong, Kanan from India, Adeline from Malaysia. Myself, I'm Malaysian, but I'm based in Singapore. So ask us anything about these jurisdictions, and we'll be happy to assist. So yes, so that's the brief summary of what we'll cover today. And I'll start with the first question, which is how has COVID-19 affected the legal industry? Personally, my view is that at least the one that affected me the most is how courts in Singapore has changed from in-person hearing to pretty much, I think, about 90% Zoom hearings. Today, because I'm a disputes lawyer, today, unless there are trials or there are criminal cases, especially or cases involving life and liberty, we practically do all our hearings on Zoom. And that has been quite a significant change because that means I can do it anywhere I want. I can do it. I've got colleagues who have gone home to Malaysia and they do it in their hotel rooms, or some of them, they traveled and they did it on the beach, all kinds of possibilities, right? So that to me has been the major impact. I'll open up to the panel. Narae, maybe you want to start first?
Oh, sure. Since Korea has contained the COVID-19 situation without any lockdown, I can say that the COVID-19 has caused a dramatic change in the Korean legal services market. However, it is also true that the COVID-19 opened up some possibilities of the changes in the future. One of the aspects that I would like to highlight in this conference is the working from home has been widely accepted in Korea in many fields, including legal services. Before the COVID-19, I think there was some reluctance towards the working at home type of style, specifically in the business field. However, after the outbreak, people, including lawyers, tend to substitute offline meetings with virtual ones and found out that virtual meetings are actually convenient. And although this is not the only changes that are occurring in legal field, I think this changes in the society has also affected the legal services industry as well. So this change also provoked other changes as well, including communication methods. As virtual communication has been more important, the technical ability to deploy and manage technical tools appropriately has been one of the critical competitive advantage for lawyers. And another change that I would like to bring up is the changes in the in-house legal teams. As remote working has been common after the COVID-19, many in-house lawyers also work from home. So changes in the workplace also caused changes in other aspects as well. As people work from home, finding effective ways to manage and transfer numerous documents virtually has been priority for many legal in-house teams. Since legal in-house teams deal with confidential information, security has been prime concern for most in-house legal teams. Therefore, in-house legal teams have to pay close attention not only to the legal substantive matters, but also to the technological design of the workflow. So this is the change that I felt about the changes after COVID-19 in Korea. So.
Great. What about Adeline? What have you?
Yeah, back in our home ground. So what happened is, I think the first thing that was introduced is virtual hearings. That is one of the first things that were introduced due to the movement control period that we had to go through somewhere in March up to May, and then after that there were several more control periods that came in, which limited access to courts and yes, limited cross-border travels as well. So the virtual hearing was implemented on April 19th last year, and the Chief Justice has stated that the judiciary has to take steps to amend the relevant laws, and that has happened, which is a great step for the litigation practice especially. The Court of Appeal actually conducted its first online hearing on the 23rd of April in 2020 via the e-hearing system. So the hearing was broadcasted live on YouTube, and it was also broadcasted live on the judiciary's official website. And apart from that, up till now, there were a few more initiatives that has gone on due to the COVID-19 pandemic. One would be the e-jamin system, which is pretty much the payment of fines in order to plead is a one of a kind in Asian that is developed by a private company in collaboration with 2 Malaysian banks. So it's a digital solution that enables bailors to post bail through its app or website. So you don't need to actually go to court in order to post bail anymore. And I find that really, really interesting. The other system that came up only this year is called the EPG system. So the EPG system is a platform that the court's application system that's used to plead guilty. So PG means plead guilty through remote communication technology. And it is also an alternative to the existing proceedings that require a summoned person to appear physically in court in order for you to plead guilty. And this can be done online right now. I just find it pretty amazing what the pandemic has brought about in terms of digitalization of the legal practice, as well as the judiciary. So these are some of the things that has happened right here. And our latest Malaysian Bar Council AGM was also held virtually from this year onwards. This is the 75th Malaysian Bar AGM. Voting was done online as well as the entire conduct of the meeting. So it's an exciting time to live in right now. I think Brian and Kanan would have more exciting stuff to share as well.
Yes, I'll put the mic on to, say, Kanan, and then we'll get to Brian. Kanan? Hi, Kanan, can you hear us? Okay, maybe Brian, would you like to start first?
Sure. Oh, Kanan's moving now. Kanan, can you hear us? Oh, if not, maybe I'm happy to go ahead while she's dealing with technical difficulties. Welcome to live. Thanks so much, Gian, and love to kind of build upon what has previously been shared by Narae and Adeline. So starting with the courts, yes, it's interesting how everyone calls it slightly differently. In Hong Kong, it's called remote hearings. So whether it's through telephone and then, of course, through video conferencing, civil hearings have now been permitted remotely, although not quite criminal as yet. In Hong Kong, the Department of Justice here has actually introduced two interesting new initiatives. One was a COVID-19 online dispute resolution scheme. So the Department of Justice has been promoting a new online dispute resolution called eBram. And specifically with when COVID arose, there was funding that was received to assist with COVID-related dispute resolution. So if your dispute is COVID-related and it's less than 500K Hong Kong, for just $200 Hong Kong, you can do an online dispute resolution. So this is hopefully will allow for more adoption rates of these platforms. I haven't seen any statistics from that as yet, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out in terms of increasing adoption rates of online. This is mediation and arbitration, not main courts. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. Another, DOJ initiative was the creation of a LawTech fund. So, last year when COVID was just starting, they actually announced a fund that allowed for small and medium enterprise law firms and chambers. So if you have less than 5 lawyers, you can apply for up to 50,000 Hong Kong dollars to procure and upgrade your IT systems or even for LawTech trainings. The latest report I saw as of January was that more than 500 applicants had been received, which was about 70% of the target audience. And because it includes teleconferencing, I presume that helped with the Zoom stock price. So it'll be, again, interesting to see how much of that and where that was all allocated by these SME law firms and chambers. And I look forward to seeing some of those statistics as things come through. As Narae was mentioning, my background was I was in private practice and more recently in-house here in Hong Kong. And so my community, I'm closer to the in-house community, especially as it relates to LawTech. And late last year, I actually, Light Lab collaborated with the Association of Corporate Counsel and Eversheds to release a report called Eliminating the New Normal. And that was presented at the ACC Asia Digital meeting. And so I thought I could share some stats and some information that the audience might find interesting. So this is not just Hong Kong, this is Asia Pacific. There are about 50 plus responses from various sizes of in-houses, but including, I think, especially multinationals as they're members of ACC. So about 60% of legal departments felt that they were somewhat more important or relevant because of COVID, because of the things that had arisen, and 48% felt that they were now shaping the response to the COVID crisis and also the firm's future strategy. In terms of the areas the most focused on during the COVID period, it's contracts, it's employment, and it's data privacy and security. Again, none of these should be surprising for those of us living through that, but it's interesting to see it reinforced in some of these survey responses. And last but not least on this aspect, a lot of the in-houses had mentioned that COVID has been a trigger for digital transformation and also for remote working being high on the agenda, but lack of budget is a main barrier. So we shall see how that develops.
Thanks, Brian. I just have one quick follow-up question before we go to Kanan, which is that the mention that the Hong Kong grant and in terms of the 50K Hong Kong grant, there any sort of restrictions in terms of whitelist of companies that you can use or solutions they can use for the grant? Because in Singapore, the way they do it is that we've got grants, but you can only use it to sort of purchase these solutions which are not. So I can't use it, for instance, for Microsoft Office. Okay, maybe Microsoft Office has since been added, but initially it was quite limited in range.
So my understanding is there's no overt grant in overt whitelist. So it wasn't, if you like, as you know, Singapore is a very clever and forward-looking kind of domestic growth strategy for its own legal tech, right? Which is one reason why it does that. So I whether my response to that is overtly there is no whitelist per se. Internally, I'm sure there's some sort of vetting, but my suspicion is a lot of it went to Microsoft 365 and Teams and the like. And so those of us in legal tech, we kind of joke that, oh, that's legal tech, right? But again, remember these 5 and less than 5 lawyer firms. And so what is it that they really need and want? And again, they're willing and able to handle. So again, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks. So Kanan, over to you.
I mean, very interesting inputs from everyone. If I were to add how the COVID-19 pandemic has shaped specifically the justice systems in India, of course, there are winners and there are losers. In one way, the fact that everything has become virtual, I mean, the government has been pushed to make virtual hearings because, of course, physical hearings were no longer possible. It became very easy for a different clientele to kind of make sure that they were able to attend or at least take their disputes virtually, which was not otherwise possible physically. Things have been more convenient for a lot of people. Also, the kind of softwares which were already existing, were able to put to use finally. So there are some very strong advantages. The cost advantages were also very significant for the law firms and, of course, some corporate clients. But on the other hand, there are other set of clients which also lost out because physical hearings are the need of the hour for a lot of people who otherwise don't have access to the justice mechanisms. So they definitely felt at a loss that they no longer could present themselves. One of the losing kind of stakeholders was also a lot of lawyers who depend on going to the court as a means to kind of their livelihood. So in India, there is an example that there was a protest that was held recently that please start physical courts again so that some of the lawyers who have lost their livelihoods can also kind of be back on track. So that is an interesting development also to see. One of the other observations that I'd like to share is that, of course, there are certain softwares which were able to catch on easily, but there is also something called the whole government approach that is needed, because only judiciary using a certain kind of software and information technology platforms also has to be connected to the prisons, for example, or the branches of the government, because there is a lot of data transfers also needed, and to make it more seamless, it is necessary that kind of entire governmental machinery adopts it in a certain way so that the client end is easier. So there's also a lot of conversation around that do we want to make a piecemeal approach as it is right now, a quick fix, just the Zoom hearings, or is it something for the future that it is going to continue? And if it is a futuristic thing that is no longer going back to only physical hybrid model, for example, then what kind of systemic platforms are we going to think about? So those questions have also emerged, but maybe I'll just stop here for now because that is jumping the guns from what you just asked.
Thank you so much, Kanan. So now we'll move on to another area that we'd like to cover, which is that having heard what or how COVID-19 has changed the legal industry or legal tech industry, how might someone who is interested in studying legal tech startup or in this area, in terms of the business opportunities in this area, tap into the opportunities that are available? I'll start with, say, Brian. We changed the order a little bit just for the sake of swiftness
and equity. Okay, no, happy to respond to that. So again, I have a few different capacities. So one is, I'm actually the co-chair of the RegTech committee, the FinTech Association. So we're looking at RegTech adoption, and that's linked to FinTech. So that's, as you know, FinTech is a much more burgeoning kind of area, much more forward-looking. And I know this conference has a separate FinTech kind of stream as well. But for LawTech, it's a little bit more discreet, shall we say? And the way I see LawTech is you've got LawTech to serve the profession, right? There's LawTech to serve the in-houses, there's LawTech to serve the courts, and there's LawTech to serve the access to justice, right? So and there are probably lots in between as well. So at least and to be honest, it's not necessarily that easy, but there are initiatives. One is the Law Society has got an InnoTech Law Hub. But I think their strategy is really more along the line of co-developing, solutions for its members. Again, the Law Society's membership, like a lot of those around the world and the region, are primarily smaller law firms, right? So they're working closely with Hong Kong Science and Technology Park as part of the Global Acceleration Academy to kind of co-develop LawTech solutions. So there are ways to, if you're a LawTech, to kind of tap in. If you want to serve law firms, that's one way to tap in, right? If you now, one of the things that we're doing at Lab is to try to address the issues of in-houses. So we've recently created a LawTech and RegTech sandbox. So this is really more of a virtual sandbox. It's not a real digital sandbox, so to manage expectations. But in essence, the idea there is us to co-design proof of concepts with corporate counsel, with startups, but also with NGOs, right? For the last for access to justice, the earlier ones really for real proof of concepts that can be used in-house. So some of our partners include LawTechs from the US and Australia, but we're co-creating and co-designing this with multinational corporates and their general counsel and even their legal ops teams in companies that cover finance, logistics, and property. So we're trying to address one of the main issues that legal counsel have, which is the lack of budget and time. So by having a win-win-win, we're creating co-design proof of concepts where a counsel have a use case problem. Our students can actually use LawTech to actually build and create a POC, and then let's see how we go. This is the first semester we're doing it. Let's see how this progresses, but it sounds pretty promising. Then last but not least, one of the things that we do is I'm an organizer wearing my other hat, my ACMI hat of Legal RegTech Hack. And I do that in conjunction with different kind of other organizations, right? One is Global Legal Hackathon, where we've been lucky enough where our top teams have won in New York, but also with Legal Hackers. And so we've organized in that context with Legal Hackers a Legal Smart Contract Challenge. So what was earlier on mentioned by Benjamin, so in terms of smart contracts, we've actually worked with some smart contract platforms whereby the participants in our challenge actually got to learn some of and build prototypes using some of these blockchain platforms for use cases in the ecosystem. These are some of the ways that we're trying to pull it together. One of my dreams has always been to kind of create an incubator, an accelerator. We'll see how it goes. COVID kind of threw a wrench into all of that, like a lot of other things. So fundraising is much harder. But again, as people are developing further, I'm hopeful that will come here in Hong Kong, given the fact that we have some of the largest law firms having their regional headquarters here, and as well multinationals.
Thanks, Brian. Very, very interesting ideas and opportunities there. What about, let's say, Adeline? Yeah.
So in terms of startup opportunities here in APAC, right? On the Malaysian scene, we do have a number of fundings that are available, but not specifically for legal tech. It's more towards law firms as an enterprise or a business entity itself being able to apply for certain funds that are given out by government agencies in order to adopt digitalization processes. Things like what Brian has mentioned, Microsoft Teams. If you have subscribed during that period of time when the grant is out and your application is successful, then you will be able to be reimbursed for the sum that you need to pay for digitalizing your business processes. So law firms are considered part and parcel of a business entity that are entitled to the same grant as any other businesses. So not a specific grant available just for the legal industry itself. But I think there is a lot of untapped potential in respect of the legal tech industry here, not just in Malaysia, but in Southeast Asia, generally speaking. In Malaysia alone, what we realized through research over a couple of years back is that legal tech is not a concept that is very well acquainted with the legal practice yet. In-house counsels are actually more acquainted with legal tech as compared to the legal practitioners out there. The reason is, I think, because the adoption of technology within companies are more prevalent as opposed to those in legal practice itself. So when companies adopt technologies, then the legal team within the companies would inevitably has to be onboarded as well. And we run a lot of awareness raising programs, such as summits, something like this, where we host discussions so that we can raise the awareness amongst communities as well as legal practitioners on the importance of legal tech and how it can benefit both the commercial transaction side of things as well as the legal transaction side of things. A lot of, I think, the ecosystem do not realize that legal tech is actually part and parcel of what a startup ecosystem or even a commercial ecosystem is. So when we talk about contract management, even your employment contract, for instance, where you have to put in all the terms and conditions of a hiring and firing policy, that one itself is part legal and part business. We can't separate that one from another. The regulatory industry like law, finance, the government policies, they're all interlinked and interrelated, and businesses can't without them because we have to accord with them. I think for the region itself, in terms of Southeast Asia, awareness raising is still key. So we have run hackathons for Malaysia here. We've organized Malaysia's first ever legal tech hackathon in 2018, and we've continued to run the second time round in 2019, and we've also organized the summit. Of course, the pandemic has threw us off quite a bit, so we have not running those hackathons. I hear you, Brian. But we do want to keep on raising awareness, and hence we are here today.
Thanks, Adeline. I'll pass the mic to Kanan and then Narae.
Very interesting times, I think, for legal tech and tech in the law for general. On one hand, of course, physical meetings, and as Brian and Adeline said, hackathons are no longer possible to organize. But this is also the time where the law firms, in-house counsels, the judiciary itself, ministries of justice are open to technology more than ever before. And different kind of technologies are being looked at now. Of course, the low-hanging fruits, in my opinion, are the court management softwares, because everybody's going to be looking for it. Or in-house law firm management softwares, again, I think which is a no-brainer. Good contracts will become important because people don't want to fight anymore. People don't want to kind of go through the hassle of, is it going to be a physical hearing, virtual hearing? So make sure that I don't even fight. So kind of document automation is kind of something that really rings. I say this because at the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law, since last 10 years, we've been running something called the Innovating Justice Challenge. So we've received thousands of applications from all over the world in the last 10 years. And that's something that I do as a justice innovation researcher, is to just look at the trends, which is something which we call the what works. Because a lot of time people reinvent the wheel. They kind of, they're excited about law and tech, and they want to say, okay, let me ride on the wave and innovate something. But I have to also admit that in a couple of years, that idea kind of sinks, unfortunately, because there is no strong business model around it. There is no strong team to kind of push it through the initial excitement. So we've created 7 categories of what we see actually works, which is called the game changers. And some of the ideas around tech, because we also look at a lot of non-tech justice domain, which is the community justice models and prevention program. Prevention program is also very interesting, right? Because people don't want to fight anymore and moving to more preventive thinking. But at the intersection of law and tech, there are ideas such as user-friendly contracts. Then there is something on the line of one-stop shop procedures. If people don't have to kind of go everywhere, but at one stop they resolve all the disputes. It can play such a huge role in kind of resolving the disputes which are taking so long. Certain areas where there is a claims to be made from the government, that also is tech related. And just to conclude, on again prevention, I kind of a lot about it, and technology can make sure that disputes not only escalate but don't only happen. So yeah, just some of my thoughts on legal tech and the trends.
Thanks, Kanan. Narae?
Yes, building on what everybody said, I would say that another field that I would like to focus on from legal tech perspective is pro bono services. And there are many groups of people in society who are underserved by legal services. And without any resources or information to seek help from the legal industry, they can hardly find any tools to protect their legal rights. So although some lawyers from goodwill have helped them as pro bono cases, it is not enough to cover all the cases, and it is hard for them to prioritize those pro bono cases over other cases. So I believe we can solve this issue systematically by adopting legal services. I think this is kind of connected to what Kanan mentioned about the legal innovation justice system. So for example, regarding the refugee cases, I think we can think of building a database where people can easily seek help from lawyers and get information about the refugee application system in a country that they are interested in, multiple languages. And by lowering the barriers to access to justice, I think we can serve the people who have little access to justice. And as a way of approaching the legal tech industry in APAC region, I would suggest a good way of approaching this would be to find some associations, legal tech associations, both in national and regional ones, so that you can get some information resources to help you to plan out your business plans for legal tech. For example, Alita, where we are all joined as a steering member, would be a good chance to get some information and resources and get some help on how to make some plans for your business and legal tech community in Asian Pacific region.
Thanks, Narae. So from what I've heard so far, I think maybe I'll just try to summarize a few points. I think one of the things that Kanan mentioned that's quite applicable and should be on top of everyone's mind if you're interested in going into legal tech industry is to look out for the sort of no-brainer solutions, things that clearly works. And there is enough out there right now to at least show certain there clear demand, but such as document automation, legal project management, these are things that I think more and more lawyers recognize, or people in the legal industry, not just lawyers, recognize the need for these services. But there are no clear market leaders, and this market is still very much up for grabs. So in that sense, you can come in and conquer this market if you want to, and if you have your expertise from other industries that you can then use those experience that you have and bring it into legal tech, right? That's one big point, to look for no-brainer or things that clearly work. And second is to look for grants, sandboxes, like the things that Brian mentioned, Adeline mentioned, and see where there are grants. And a lot of law firms, unfortunately, I think my experience is a lot of them don't even know the existence of these grants. And a lot of people also don't know of the existence of these sandboxes. I think partially is because we still need more education, more awareness. But look for these things which can provide you a platform to test out the idea you have, to grow at least at the initial phase of your companies. And the third thing is to match yourself up with communities like Alita, like legal hackers, because this is where you meet the people. And my experience is that everyone's been very helpful, very friendly, very willing to share. And in a way, we're sort of like maybe fintech 5 years ago. We are very much at the starting phase, I think, of legal tech. And we all depend on each other as a community, and engage with the community, and you can then grow your business, and you might find someone who can match what you need, right? So those are some of the key ideas that I've heard in terms of how someone might interested in the legal industry might sort of tap into the opportunities available. We'll now move on to what we think will happen post-pandemic? What do we think are the challenges in terms of ensuring that the stickiness of these technology solutions that have been adopted? Because I think we heard, it's like to some extent, Narae mentioned in Korea, where after things sort of became better in terms of COVID, things sort of just went back to business as usual on certain areas. So how can we prevent that? Or how can we ensure that technology, the adoption of technology, will continue to accelerate after the pandemic ends? So that's the next key question. Maybe Narae, you want to start first?
Oh yes. As I mentioned, Korea have opened up some possibilities for change from the COVID situation, and I think the change will not just go away even after the COVID situation, because already the clients' expectations are changing, and they expect that the legal services will be based on some technologies, and the lawyers will employ some technological method to provide legal services. And I think under the circumstances, it will be a good opportunity to transform legal services from experience-driven to data-driven. So up until now, legal services have been dependent on the past experience of senior and partner lawyers, which are transferred to the junior lawyers by training. So with this change provoked by COVID-19, I believe legal services will depend more on technology and data analysis. So rather than sharing your experience on the similar cases, lawyers are more encouraged to share their data analysis result based on the documents that they have dealt with before, and approach the cases based on a more scientific way. So that is the change that I expect that will occur after the COVID situation ends.
Thanks so much. Adeline?
Honestly, the trend that I'm seeing right here in Malaysia is that mid to larger size law firms have reverted to the traditional way of doing business already, right after the movement control period has been lifted. And there's just a gloss of additional agility that came together with technologies that has been adopted during the movement control period. And that kind of technology has been adopted in order to ensure the survival of law firms, especially those that are larger to mid-size, because the adoption itself actually takes up quite a bit of cost for law firms. In order to digitalize a large law firm with a capacity of 100 fee earners, with a back office of another 100, for instance, that would take up a lot of cost to onboard everybody just to get it going and piloted. So I understand the reason behind going back to a traditional legal practice with a gloss of technology adopted during the pandemic. Just it's an easier way. It's definitely more comfortable. But moving forward, I would be really, really excited to see less need to come into office physically in order to handle physical files. So I do look forward to a lot more digitalization of files and lawyers being able to work remotely from anywhere they are without having to get approval letters just in order to cross borders from state to state within the same country, as well as other forms of access to justice. I think in post-pandemic era, there will be more platforms for people to gain access to justice itself. What we have done with my company is to help clients create portals for crowdfunding for litigation. So there are more means and more awareness out there in the market now that if you're unable to reach certain lawyers, or if you're unable to even get access to justice because of the situation that you're in, or because of a financial strap due to the COVID situation, there are many other means that you are able to tap into to gain access to justice now, simply because people are more acquainted with digital solutions. And a lot of people don't go out without having their smartphones at hand, because the number of QR codes that we have to scan to check into places is already incredible by itself. Right? So I think a traditional business model with a gloss of technology on top post-pandemic is more likely for the next couple of years.
Thanks, Adeline. Next up, Kanan, and then we'll have Brian.
Very interesting to know, especially what Adeline said, that law firms are going back to the traditional way of doing business, and that is also understandable. For me, I can say that the cost considerations will be playing a very important role of the savings of cost that technology makes for clients and also for law firms. So I think people in the legal tech industry will have to start making stronger and stronger case and show numbers, as Narae said, that how much the technology can save for you in terms of the cost. And also in terms of the times and efficiencies, if technology makes a stronger case for lawyers to say that, okay, I can do things better with these technology instead. So cost, time considerations, and efficiency is something that technology really has to sell after the pandemic. Otherwise, it's very easy to slip into the traditional way of business. It's also because, and that also makes me think about the trust considerations, right? That means pandemic, great opportunity. Why was the technology not able to create the kind of trust to continue to be adopted? Is it something that still it's an in-person kind of a feel that clients still prefer, that they are going to the traditional way? Of course, there are other issues that technology presents, right? Data issues or privacy issues, and regulations are needed. And I think the whole ecosystem has to move faster so that we don't slip back to the old way of business, because it would just be not ideal in my opinion. We need to move forward from this. It is an opportunity we need to bank on, and this is the time to make sure we continue forward than starting to have to make a case all over again. It will be unfortunate. Yeah. Thanks,
Kanan. Brian?
So the thing about speaking last is building upon what everybody else has said. So I think what I would add is a few things. So one is, my community, given my background, is I tend to be, more affiliated with the larger to medium to larger firms, with the corporate counsel, corporate community, and the access to justice, the NGOs. So on the firm side, A&O recently announced, just last week, they anticipate up to 40% would be working from home going forward. And Freshfields has announced that they're going to commit up to 50%, right, to work from home going forward. So that's a seismic change in terms of how the big law firm anyway will be looking. And in some ways, that's a fantastic thing, because that's really addressing a long-standing issues in corporate law and big law in relation to work-life balance, retention of smart female lawyers who, after they become mothers, want to continue working but have had difficulty. So I think that I think is at least staying for the high end of the market, shall we say. To again quote the Light Lab, ACC, and Evershed's report that I mentioned earlier on, where again, corporate counsel #1 said, yes, remote working will be here to stay. In terms of the key technology priorities, 50% said that contract management and e-signature would be, highest priority, and 53% said document automation tools and document management would be high priorities. So this is from the in-house point of view. And again, we work with in-house. We like to work with, if you like, the client, so to speak. So we're working more with corporate counsel, but also with NGOs who are often trying to address access to justice. So sometimes the access to justice tools we're working on are B2B, so assisting those NGOs to be more efficient and be more impactful. Sometimes we're looking to B2C, but there are challenges there. So what I would add on the stickiness thing is, as was said earlier on by Kanan, budget is #1 consideration and concern for corporate counsel, right? And so they're starting to talk about proof of value, right? And that's always been an issue for corporate counsel. How do you prove your worth, right? In these circumstances, because you're not front office, you're back, you're a cost center. One of the things that I think is really emerging is, and we see this in the intersections of the law and regulation, but also technology. And again, I work on this in the RegTech side, is talent development. So how do you get traditional lawyers to be willing and able to talent? How do you get technologists who may be used to doing it in a certain way to use their skill sets with respect to the legal side of things? So increasingly, we're working with legal ops teams. We have a Chances Automation Academy kind of reach out to collaborate with us. A lot of speakers here are also part of the collaboration that Alita has with ATIC to adopt legal tech tools. And for example, we're even wearing my ACMI hat, launching kind of boot camps to try to because I think a lot of this has to be hands-on. So actually working interdisciplinary, working with law firms in-house and also technologists to build the skills and the project management skills for legal tech. So I think needs to be key for the stickiness to happen.
Thanks, Brian. So you're not the last one to speak. I'm going to be the last one to speak, and I'm trying to build on what everyone has mentioned. I think from what I've heard, one thing that Kanan has mentioned, Brian has mentioned, and other panelists as well, is in terms of, so it links to cost, but I think you can look at it the other way, is metrics, right? Because and Kanan said you need to build a better case. So how do you build a better case for law firms, for in-house to adopt these solutions? I think you need to look at metrics. And COVID has provided some sort of like a platform for experiments. And I think if you're in this industry, you should be looking at how you collect the key metrics that you can use to persuade these companies to adopt your solutions. For instance, how the increase in digitization reduce the printing and the carbon footprint, and then comes with cost as well of print or cost of traveling. How have you been able to continue to, if say I'm in a law firm, I'm thinking, okay, do I have to set up the same amount of budget for people to fly business class every year to do their development? Or can I use this money for something else? If during COVID, I am still able to hit the kind of targets, I'm still able to do the BD that I need to, why can't I allocate the resources separately? So if I'm in this industry, I'm trying to think of how can I continue to ensure the adoption of technology after pandemic. I'll be busy collecting data that's coming out of this pandemic to prove that everything still works. So in Narae, for instance, it's quite clear that even with remote working, the number of billable hours and so on, which is, the great thing about lawyers is that we track how many hours you work and bill, but it's also a terrible thing because it's a massive inefficiency to a certain extent. But that's another topic to discuss some other time. Is you can see the billable hours going up, and then you have feedback coming from people saying that I save 2 hours from traveling every day, for instance. So these are things that will persuade management to continue to have remote working, and so that's one thing in terms of metric. And second is I hear a lot of talks about Zooms, online hearings, and remote hearings, and I think the next step really, if we want to continue development, is push for the adoption of online dispute resolution. Because when you have a framework that is first and foremost online, then everything else sort of follows. Everything else that's digital sort of has to follow, because whoever that's doing it has to use technology anyway. They can't just rely purely on pen and paper. And I think quite recently the UK Supreme Court Lord Justice Briggs said, in future, the way he sees potentially online dispute resolution developing is that there's only one civil procedure, which is just do whatever the electronic form says, right? And that simplifies so many things, both in terms of access to justice as well as user friendliness of whatever that you have. And so that links me to the point, which is stickiness in legal tech is not that different from stickiness in say another commercial sort of e-commerce technology. It's really all about user friendliness, user interface. And I think a lot of what we have been using in the legal industry so far, there are sort of band-aids applied over to the legal industry as a stopgap measure, right? We are using Zoom, but is Zoom really the best platform for legal hearings? Because a lot of lawyers still struggle with bandwidth issues. Can we not, or should we not look into having solutions that have lower that accommodates lower bandwidth and still have clear sort of signals and clear video and audio, right? So things like that, we have to think about how to actually tailor whatever that's out there to the legal industry and not just apply whatever that's already out there in a sort of non-bespoke way for the legal industry. So those are some of the points that I gathered from what we've discussed. Then I will now move on to the Q&A, the questions that have been asked. And so to those who have joined later, please we encourage you to go to the Q&A section and post your questions. I think now we've got about 3 questions. The first question is from Xiang. He asked, what collaboration has there been between regulators and law societies within the region? I'll open the floor to anyone who wants to address this question.
I think I can go first, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the panelists have something to say as well. In terms of collaboration between regulators and societies here in the Southeast Asia region, apart from Singapore, which I think your collaboration is pretty close-knit, I don't think there has been a lot of huge collaboration between regulators and law societies within the Malaysian context itself. So what usually happened previously when we tried to have a grassroots movement to promote legal tech and the adoption of technology for legal practice and in-house counsel is we approach the regulators as well as the law societies in terms of training points. So it's a continuing professional development point, CPD points. So to encourage legal professionals to come in and join in the conversation as well as to share skills between each other. A lot of the problems that come up from the legal fraternity are actually quite different from what the business community has faced. And that gap has not been breached over a long time. So when we do have those kind of conversations, the business community and the legal fraternity start to learn about each other's problem statements, and they start to try resolve it through technology or through knowledge sharing sessions. And I think that kind of grassroots collaboration, rather than a cascading top-down form of collaboration, has worked pretty well for the Southeast Asia region, I think, for the time being. It'd be great to have more regulators involved in this kind of a movement to promote legal tech and to promote the adoption of technology for the legal fraternity. But right now, the grassroots seems to be stronger of a voice.
Okay, before other panelists answer, I just have one follow-up question to what Adeline mentioned, which is, what do you think is, or is there an obstacle or something that we need to overcome to encourage collaboration between regulators and law societies? Because you say it's not happening much. So the natural question is, why not? Right? And I think the other panelists can also address this if this is an issue in their jurisdictions.
I think in our backyard right here, it would be lack of data. So the lack of data means the lack of understanding of how the market works and how the market functions, and the lack of understanding of how technology can actually help you improve your business, improve your legal processes and functions. So the legal fraternity is pretty much elusive to the business community at large. A lot of people don't know how law firms function. Even new lawyers, I have gotten questions like, do we register with the company's registrar? You know, when you need to register with your law society. So I think it's just the lack of data and the lack of understanding, and that is showing that we are still at an infancy stage when it comes to adoption and digitalization. But I'm happy that there are a lot of movers and shakers in the industry who are willing to take this forward to collaborate with each other on a grassroots level and put forth more amendments and movements and proposals to the law societies as well as later on the regulators to bring in more incentives for technology adoption within the legal fraternity.
Right. I think so for the benefit of the other panelists as well, is my view and I'm not sure whether I'm understanding this question correctly. So Xiang, please clarify if anything, is that when we're talking about regulators, we're really looking at, say, Ministry of Law and the relevant government departments regulating the legal industry, and then the law societies working with them when it comes to pushing legal tech. So that's just the context. So yeah, I just leave it as that. Anyone else wants to chime in on this issue?
Very quickly, if I may just add to what Adeline said on the second question that you asked, Ian. I think what is critical is keep the user in the center, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what the regulators, the law societies, system in general is there to serve the justice issues or the legal issues of people. And their interest is paramount. So if that case is made strongly and people kind of come together, the different stakeholders, to make sure that that is addressed, then hopefully that will lead to a lot more collaboration and a lot more kind of ease of processes for everyone concerned. But that's something that we talk a lot about at HiiL, that user-centric law or user-centric justice systems.
Thanks, Kanan.
Maybe I can add a little bit to that. So that for your clarification there, Jian, on the word regulators, because actually to take a step back, as a lot of us will know, the legal profession is self-regulated, right? Like the medical profession. So that's one of it, it's a guild, right? It's a protect membership, right? And to fend off other people who are not members to protect the livelihoods of the people in the membership, right? Now, the Department of Justice may have more access to justice potentially concerns, right? Depending and Department of Law, depending on the different jurisdictions. Although very often, shall we say, a lot of them also have nationalistic kind of agendas, and understandably, it's taxpayers' money, so it's growing the industry, right? And it's growing Singaporean lawyers, Hong Kong lawyers, Malaysian lawyers, Indian lawyers, right? So again, and the same way that, a lot of us are admitted in multiple jurisdictions. I went to New York because New York law is well established across the world, right? So a lot of jurisdictions want to promote their laws as commercial laws so that they can do dispute resolution in their neck of the woods. So there is a competitive element there that we cannot deny, I think, right? And not blame. But I think that the element that hasn't been mentioned this yet, and I believe this is key, is the judiciary. Right. So I always say that I'm very jealous of jurisdictions where you have chief justices stand up, and Singapore is one of them. Adeline, you were just mentioning, Malaysia is one as well, right? Where the chief justice is up there saying, you know what, profession, you need to do this. I'm like, so Hong Kong doesn't quite have that yet, right? So we now have a new chief justice, and as a lot of people know, there are lots of other things happening in Hong Kong as well on rule of law. So there are quite a few complexities. I think if the judiciary, who are meant to be the hallmarks of keeping rule of law and access to justice and justice for all, can come forward and are willing to do that. One of my hopes actually was to try to do it on a judicial level. So Siang, I think on the MOJ, Department of Justice level, it can potentially be done, but there are competitive aspects. If the judiciary across them, I was trying to do it in Asia law, right? If the judiciaries can actually come together and do that as an overall concept, I think that'll be very powerful. But to date, intra-regional, I think it's been challenging. Within each country, we're all doing it in our own different way. Adeline described it as a grassroots approach. One of the reasons why I joined Hong Kong U is in the law faculty, which ... is what they say. Oh, most of the judges came from Hong Kong U. So this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because as a platform to actually grow this, hopefully we have the legitimacy. I'm having discussions with the Judicial Institute, which is the institute that trains the judges. So the hope and intent is we can slowly grow the ecosystem.
Thanks, Brian. Narae, do you have anything to add?
Oh, yes. I think the situation in Korea is mostly based on grassroots level. And as Adeline mentioned, there is a lack of understanding of legal technology among lawyers. And actually, lots of lawyers are resisting to the adoption of legal technology. So that builds another obstacle to the adoption of legal technology. And I think, as Adeline rightly pointed out, we have to increase the understanding of the legal technology. I think if they learn how to control and use legal technology in their services and use it for improve their quality of the service, then there would be, we can remove the obstacles of the legal tech adoption in legal society in Korea. And in that way, we can use that voice to persuade the regulators and make our voice heard about the adoption of the legal technology in Korea.
Thanks, Narae. So in essence, I think we all would like there to be more collaboration with regulators and law societies. But in the meantime, for those jurisdictions which don't have this or top-down approach, or we don't see that much collaboration, we would need the grassroots to collaborate more, push for the case that we have, and then hopefully that would lead to more collaboration between regulators and law societies in the future. I'm conscious of time. I think just quickly, one short question, Josh, which is he asked, so to play devil's advocate, some say the only tech shifts happening from COVID-19 are video conferencing, remote desktop connections, and cloud service solutions, not enough to create real change in the industry. So I just give all of you, say, a short 30 seconds maximum, and we'll wrap up this session.
I'll take this one. I mean, I'm really, how can you say, I'm in agreement with what Josh is saying. It's kind of hilarious to me. The technology is capable of so much more. It is capable of fundamentally disrupting the way people come together to discuss legal issues. So a lot of what we've seen during COVID is virtual hearings and is kind of just moving things for law's sake or for the symbol's sake that we are doing technology related now focused, but I believe technology is capable of a lot more, and a lot more disruption will come. So there is a resistance around it, to be honest. But I hope that changes, and I hope the clients and the users start demanding what is out there for other industries, and that need to infuse into the industry of law and justice. So very quickly.
Thanks.
Well, I think it's not so much a sword, but about the person actually using the sword. So you can have basic technologies, but it's just how you use it and for what purpose that makes all the difference. Good question, though.
Maybe I'll be a bit provocative because you all know I am. So I would disagree with that. Well, I think it may apply to certain segments of the legal fraternity, but that's one of the reasons why we're working with corporate counsel. Right, so for corporate counsel, our POCs are in legal triage and on document automation. So that's what our POCs are primarily focused on, right? And there is a great need for that. Now, that's because their business model is their fixed cost. They just need efficiencies. With a law firm where you charge by the hour, why do I want to, spend less time? Because I make less money, right? So that's why, perhaps, to answer Josh's question, document automation for a law firm may be a tougher kind of proposition, and people haven't found the secret sauce for that one as yet. But because how are you going to charge, GN, right? Right. So whereas for in-house, that's a total win-win, because they are fixed cost. How do they save time? How can they be more efficient, right? And therefore they can do more value add off. One anecdote I tell is that when I was at CS, I was doing billion-dollar deals, but I had to do NDAs as well. That was like a total waste of my time, I thought, right? So if that can be automated, fantastic. And obviously a lot of other in-houses.
Thanks, Brian. Narae?
Echoing what everyone said before, I would like to shortly mention that technological change can provoke other changes, including the way of communication and the way of work be done. So it'd be a good start to trigger other big changes in legal service.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, I think my view is that we cannot underestimate the kind of shifts that has happened with COVID-19. Yes, maybe we're starting remote hearings, right? And starting with just cloud solutions. But, to a lot of lawyers, this is a great leap for them. And having taken this leap, they will be thinking, what's next? And it's for us to persuade them that there are a lot of efficiencies they can gain from that. So I think, it might seem small for you, but to a lot of people, it's huge, and we can make it even bigger, right? So that's my concluding thought. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. And thank you for all panelists for taking the time off on Sunday afternoon, and for Kanan waking up at 5 a.m. over there. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful summit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.